show you how a peer-to-peer net works with several people. And with that, let me share my screen here. Well, thank you so much. And present. And remember, I have a tougher time seeing the chat. I'll look down every now and again because I'm using two computers here. So I've got a secondary computer at the bottom, and hopefully I can do your chat, but please hold your chat till after. And, you know, then we'll or your questions, and then we'll cover them as we go along. We've had quite a few people ask us because of the earthquake we had this morning, and we actually used the "Did you feel it?" form to report it as amateur radio operators, and that was a whole lot of fun. And just to give you an idea of what the sizes are like, between 3 and 4 is kind of a minor earthquake, then light earthquakes, moderate, up to a 6, 6 to 7, strong earthquake. Now you're talking the billions of dollars in damage, and then major earthquakes from 7 on upwards. So this is one of those things to keep in mind. Remember, the moment magnitude scale is actually every increase in magnitude here is 32 times the energy released from the previous one. So it adds up relatively quickly. And just to give you an idea, average tornado is about 4.7. So that's what we experienced, something very close we experienced this morning in San Fernando Valley. What does that mean for amateur radio? Emergency service Los Angeles, and this is, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek. In this area between 4 and 6 is "don't worry, be happy." It usually means that our people get onto the repeaters and tell each other how much their pool was sloshing, how their pets were scared, and so on. At 6, it's an automatic activation, so we're actually standing up nets at 6. And then I'm always saying, it's okay, we're activating. Let's just get ourselves organized. And at 7 or higher, stop what you're doing. This is serious, or as we like to call it, don't call us, we'll call you. We'll reach out. So you'll see us do that. Just to give you an idea of what earthquakes are like. If there ever were a 7 or higher earthquake in the LA area, we'd be in trouble. Let's just say that. And 9 or larger, it's bye-bye Seattle. That won't happen for us. But, you know, just in Seattle with a Cascadia subduction zone, that's certainly an option. All right, let's get this party started. Chapter 2, Winlink, peer-to-peer. Why peer-to-peer? Oops, I'm sorry, I'm trying to minimize the... Why peer-to-peer? Using peer-to-peer nets is actually a great tool. For one, if you don't have any RMS gateways, and not every community has those, it's a great way to actually get started on Winlink and use the tool in addition to other tools that you already have in your toolkit, and actually use Winlink to send traffic. It's also a fantastic way to deliver training because peer-to-peer nets are live, and the beauty of this is on VHF and higher, you can actually be on a voice channel and send digital traffic. We wish that would be possible on HF because for emergency communications, it would make our life a lot easier if we could have at least parts of the spectrum where we can do voice and digital and send traffic this way, because the tactical communications is always better done on voice, and the logistical or all the data traffic is better done in digital. And I think in amateur radio, we have those abilities, and we should definitely take advantage of this. It also helps building a supportive learning environment, and you build trust with these nets. The same people show up, and you're going to have a fun time talking with them. So keep that in mind as we go forward. One of the things that we always recommend on peer-to-peer nets, have a sense of humor. Things happen on these peer-to-peer nets. They happen to me, they happen to everybody. There's no perfect. The more things go wrong during these peer-to-peer nets, the better it is, because when you actually need people to set up in the field, they will have experienced things going wrong. They will not panic, but instead they'll say, okay, listen, it's only 4 or 5 things that aren't working usually. Let's go through those real quick. And that has happened. And finally, peer-to-peer is your fallback in the face of disaster. When all else is gone, all your gateways are down, all your repeaters are down, peer-to-peer still works. As long as your operator has power and the computer isn't wet, you know, and the radio is still operating, they can do peer-to-peer. And Oscar will tell you that's pretty much how they worked in Puerto Rico for the first couple of weeks until they were able to bring back some of their infrastructure. So keep that in mind as we go forward. All right, here's the Aries LAX kind of network flow, the way that it's been working in our statewide medical health exercises. Essentially, on the left-hand side, you've got the operators, and Aries LAX is a very operator-centric organization. We're a learning organization, and we're an organization that says without the operator, it's all electronic junk. You need qualified, trained operators to make the system work because they're making the decisions on the ground. So let's say Tom, who's on here tonight, is at White Memorial Hospital, and he uses Vara FM. Robert might be at Verdugo Hospital, and he uses Arden mesh networking. And let's say Lynn is in Pomona and he's decided to use Packet. Maybe he's using FX25 because that's the only way he can reach. So our net control in this would be Jeff, W2JCL, and he would be the net control station. He might have a gateway with him at the MAC, but that would be something he would bring, or he might not. If it's a peer-to-peer station, he might decide to collect the information this way and then pass the information on. In our case, we print out everything and we pass it on to the county officials per their request. And this is our local disaster response in the first 3 days. That's going to be whenever that large earthquake hits, that's going to be how it's supposed to work. And understand that Aries LAX is supposed to support 70, that's 70, 911 receiving hospitals. That's a lot of hospitals to support. And they're just the 911 receiving hospitals. Those are not the hospitals that don't have an emergency room. They're not the hospitals, the clinics, the many clinics there are, the extended care facilities. There are over 5,000 of those in LA County alone. And, you know, with the numbers of people, we're glad if we can get 1 or 2 people per hospital. So understand that recruitment is an issue here, but this is how it's supposed to work locally. At some point after 3 days, you start looking outward for help when the federal and state responses are getting online. So at that point, we'd be looking to use Vara HF, Pactor, RDOP to reach out of area gateways, which are still connected to the internet and then can get us to, and these are just examples, CalOES or FEMA or whoever can help us solve the problem for our served agency. And this is kind of how our network flow is designed to work. Winlink peer-to-peer, push versus pull. That's a really, really important concept. Essentially, you've got 2 stations, right? They're on the same frequency. Let's focus on VHF and UHF for this example. You've got 2 stations, and they do all their tactical voice on voice. So they're talking with each other, saying, I've got traffic for you. The other station says, go ahead with your traffic. And that makes it much more efficient, especially if you have more stations. And they pass the logistical traffic using Winlink. We used to do it on N-beams, but we found Winlink for hospital traffic to be more useful. So that's why we're doing most of this now, almost all of it on Winlink. And just keep in mind, they can both initiate the session. So let's say if net control has a bulletin for the radio operators, and I just couldn't come up with a better name, so I called it radio, for the radio operator, NCS can call the radio operator and can say, I have a message for you, and we'll see how that works in practice. And the radio operator says, I'm ready to receive the message. And then the net control station can push the message, connect to the radio operator, and push the message into their system, into their inbox. You can also do something else. You can, net control can come on and can say, hey, listen, W2JCL, this is K6OLI. I've got a message waiting for you in my outbox. And the radio operator can then make a connection with the net control station and pull the information from the system. So the net control station technically only has to compose the message and post it to the outbox, and the radio operator can pick that up whenever they're authorized to do so on that frequency. So keep that in mind, because that turned out to be the most practical thing if you have multiple stations. It is very difficult for net control station to push information to all the other stations. They have to write the messages, post the messages, and then initiate a connection. That's not very efficient. It's much more efficient if net control concentrates on writing the message, posting the message, and then tells the radio operators to come and pick up the message waiting for them. That's how our exercises work. Net control creates an exercise and asks the radio operators to connect, and they do the work of initiating the session. The beauty of that is you can push and pull at the same time. If a radio operator comes online and they have a check-in ready, they can connect to net control station, send their check-in, and at the same time pick up whatever assignment they have or whatever exercise there is. For peer-to-peer to work, concurrence is necessary. What do we mean by that? That means you both stations have to be in a Vara FM peer-to-peer session at the same time, and the session has to be active. So it can't be that operator 1 is in Vara FM peer-to-peer and operator 2 is in packet peer-to-peer. They won't be able to make a connection. It can also not be that that radio operator 1 is in a Vara FM peer-to-peer session and operator 2 is in no session at all, just has Winlink running. They both have to have the same type of session working at the same time. On a net, it works the exact same way. If net control, for instance, decides I want to do Vara FM peer-to-peer and tells all the other stations, you can have 15 stations with Vara FM peer-to-peer connecting to that station. And by the way, net control can change. You know, we do that all the time, that we switch between packet and Vara FM in this case, and that makes it very effective. So you can do a packet peer-to-peer session, and then the other station has to be in packet peer-to-peer. You could do the same thing on HF, packet peer-to-peer on both sides, Vara, HF, peer-to-peer, RDOP peer-to-peer. And yes, if you have Arden Mesh, you can do that on Arden as a peer-to-peer connection or any other network where you're on the same subnet. So that works extremely well across the board. The other concept here is universality. Again, this works on Vara FM, Packet, Pactor, all the modes that are available to you in Winlink as amateur radio operators. I don't think it works in Iridium, but I have no experience with Iridium. So let's talk a little bit about how do you do that on RF, especially on VHF, UHF. And by the way, the principles are the same on HF. They are the same on Arden Mesh or any network connection. But this is kind of how we train people. We start people out with UC7HO sound modem. You're perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to use Direwolf. Works really well. And Vara FM. And so let's just go through this. By the way, on the right here, that's Mike KM6KQ during the shakeout exercise last year, Monterey Park Fire Department. And on his computer, if we blew up that image a little bit, you could see at the bottom left, he's got a packet session running, and he has an Arden Mesh session running all at the same time, and it's all in his Go box. So it took him 5 minutes to set up. Sound settings. Let's explain this for a moment. And I can show you what these sound cards look like here in real life. So again, idea of the size. This is a signal link. Here is an RA board with a spiffy little box. And I can open that up for you. And oops, there you go. Right. And then finally, here's the RIM 9600. If you have an Alinco, it's a great option to use one of these because they're literally just plug and play. Love this with my Alinco as well. All right. So the key about any of these sound modes and sound modems is to get the sound settings right. And you'll have to develop a little bit of a experience with that. It doesn't take that much, but once you understand the principles, I think it'll become pretty clear. You've got a receive volume. On the signal link, you've got that RX button in the center that changes your receive volume. And here on the RA board in the bottom left, that's the DRA50 I just showed you in the box. You also have a pot that can change that. And this is the hardware part of the setting. So understand that you have hardware controls over this. But you also have controls in your microphone properties in your Windows 10 settings. We usually recommend setting the microphone to as close to 0 decibel as you can, so you don't have any gain from Windows. And you know that works out really well, and then set it in the hardware the best you can. Same thing goes for transmit volume, right? You've got a transmit button on the signal link on the outside. You've got the transmit volume on the pot or a pot on the DRA boards. I think some of them don't, but most of them do now. And they work really nicely, especially if you have one of those hard to drive radios and you want to do Vara FM 9600. Those come in really, really handy. For Vara I should call it Vara FM wide, not 9600. Vara FM wide, they come in very handy. For Vara FM narrow, it really doesn't make that much of a difference because you're not going straight through the discriminator. So the audio levels tend to be easier to set. And don't forget the output speaker properties here. By and large, on the signal links, we recommend setting the speaker properties to 100% and then adjusting it using the TX button. And that makes it a lot easier. With the RA boards, I found, and you know, Scott might disagree with me on that. He's got more experience with this, but I found that I like to set them at about 85, 80%. And then leave the pots because it's more difficult for me to change the setting here. Let's see whether I can see this. It's more difficult to change this once the lid is on and I'm in the field than it is to do that with an outside setting. So I like to have a little bit of wiggle room in my Windows settings. All right, what's the single station workflow? Pretty straightforward. Winlink talks, lives on your computer, talks via Vara FM. Vara FM generates the signals that activates that go into your signal link via USB link cable, and then the signal link uses Vox and feeds your radio, and then it goes into your favorite antenna. Hopefully, it's field deployable antenna, and then out into the ether. And for the receiving station, it's the exact same thing, just the other way around, right? So you're receiving in the radio, the signal link takes the signal and turns it into digital. And Vara FM then demodulates it and puts it back into Winlink. So the same thing works with UC7HO and just on the packet side of things. And that graphic kind of explains to you also why you can run Vara FM and UC7HO on the same computer. And we usually run them at the same time. You can't be in 2 sessions at the same time. You're either in a Vara FM session or in a packet session. But you can certainly run the UC7HO in the background while you're doing Vara. As long as nobody's transmitting packet, you won't have any problems. And by the way, if you're using a signal link, then it's also relatively easy to switch to NBeams, FLDigi and FL message. If that is something that you like to do, it makes it really, really easy for people who have multiple modes or multiple agencies that prefer one way or another. In our case, for instance, talking with LA County Sheriffs, DCS uses NBeams a lot, so it makes it easier for us to switch from one to the other. All right, a couple of things I'd like to point out here, and let me turn on the highlighter. One, please, whenever you go and start a session, UC7HO session for the first time in a net, check your output device and your input device in your devices, because Windows has a habit of changing this, especially if you're plugging into a different USB port or there's been a recent update. TX rotation, single channel output, color waterfall, I would check all of these. Kister report 8100 checked. And then for the signal links, select the PTT port none. For the DRA boards, there's now EXT. That'll make it really easy to install and set up. And then and on this side here, we've got the modem setting. I usually turn KISS optimization on for the packet side, non-AX25 filters. I like those. TX delay you have to play around with. For any of the big four names, the Yaesu, the ICOM, the Kenwoods, the Linkos, TX delay of 250 works just fine, especially if you're using a 6-pin mini DIN. If you're getting creative with this and you're using an HT or you're using a Baofeng or anything like that, you probably have to set the TX delay higher than that. And you'll notice here on the right-hand side, there are the TX delay settings in Winlink. The ones that matter are the ones in UC7HO. What you do here doesn't matter. This is the one that's going to be active. The other thing I'd like to point out is the KISS server port 8100 here has to be the same one in your Winlink session settings, the 8100 here. And by the way, this is all in the write-ups available on the winlink.org website that we had last week. So don't worry if there's something that you have a question about. Generally speaking, don't worry about it. You can always read up on this. When you're using UC7HO, you can use AC mode, which gives you a slightly better connection. So we strongly recommend that. Also, if you're running an RMS packet gateway with UC7HO, it's now part of the feature set for sound modems to have AC mode available. We strongly encourage you to use that. And it's again, it's pretty easy to set up. You only have a handful of settings here, and they usually don't change except for the output device and input device, courtesy of Microsoft. And then this is only set once and you're good. If you net control a lot, we generally don't use the automatically launched packet sound modem because we switch between sessions relatively quickly. But if you're a user and you're kind of a net participant, we strongly recommend to just automatically launch the packet sound modem and go back and forth. Vara FM. Same thing applies here. You do want to have your device input and your device output checked. If you're using a signal link, you set it to Vox. If you have an RA board or one of these nice RIM cards here, then you set it to RA board. That makes it super easy. If you have an IC7100, you can set it to CAT. That makes it really, really nice. And by the way, CAT is also supported on UC7HO now. And that is thanks to our friends in Hawaii who did, Van, who did a lot of the programming there and shared that with both Jose and Andy. And kudos to all the programmers involved in this. And then the Vara setup, again, just like before, we had in UC7HO port 8100, here's port 8300. These are the Vara FM settings. Just make sure that those are the same numbers in both boxes on the Winlink side and on your Vara FM side. And you're pretty much done. And you can see automatically launch is also an option. That's it for the settings. Once you have that and you've got some sound coming out, you're good to go. I would like to show you real quick the Vara FM screen and highlight a couple of things that you'll see when we do the live demo. One of the things you can see here, the view meter, very important for setting audio levels. If you've selected your sound card device, whether it's a DRA board or RA board or whether it's a signaling, a view meter usually somewhere here in the center is good. For some radios, you might want to have it a little bit to the right, for some a little bit to the left. Experiment with what works really well for you. So just take a look at this. CPU usage is not super precise, so I wouldn't take it as the gospel here. And TX delay now is set automatically. That used to be something you had to do manually. It's much easier this way. And generally speaking, RA boards have a little bit lower TX delay. Very often you see 0. And then the signal to noise ratio is a great indicator. Very often in our nets, we report this. The other thing I'd like to point out is down here, you see whether you're transmitting or receiving. You see where you're connected to. In this case, I was connected to not a peer station, but a gateway, which you can see with a -11. This is an indicator of what level you were transmitting at. In this case, it's 1, but obviously the constellation diagram tells you that this was a much higher receive session earlier.
Oliver,
yes.
Can you take the bar that you have on top of it? Thank you.
Oh, does that show up? Oh, I see. I don't know. Yeah, see, the moment I move it down, there comes. Yeah, well, there goes Google. All right, let me do this again and just, oops, let me do this again and just show you at the bottom. So bottom left, you've got the TX. Then we've got the connection that tells you connected K6OLI with K6YZF11. Where you see the 1 in brackets and the 1098 bits per second, that was just me connecting because I was transmitting, and this was just the ACK at this point. You can see that in the green ACK right above that. I usually connect to him on level 10, which is pretty fast. And on the right to that, it shows you how many bytes and you send, especially for longer messages. That's really good to know. And then narrow tells you whether you're sending in narrow or wide mode, and that depends on how the partner station is set up. And then listen and TCP just tell you you connected to Winlink, and busy tells you whether there's traffic on that frequency. We do recommend that you listen before you transmit every single time. It's good practice, and especially with Vara, it'll save you a lot of headaches. All right, let's go on to peer-to-peer messages and sessions real quick. Peer-to-peer, and by the way, let me point this out here. This is the two people here is Jeff, W2JCL on the left, and Rob, KE6YGF, and they were net control for the statewide medical health exercise last year, and they got really, really busy. Our nets, frankly, got overloaded. That's just the way it was, but the Winlink stations, the hospitals with Winlink stations passed 100% of their traffic. So we did have challenges on the voice side of things, but Winlink really increased our circuit capacity, and we're looking to increasing this as we're going forward. And they are located right now at the Medical Alert Center. That's where the picture was taken in Los Angeles County. Oops. All right, peer-to-peer message and session. I cannot stress this enough because it comes up in our conversations all the time, in our peer-to-peer nets all the time. You must select peer-to-peer in the message and define it as a peer-to-peer message, and in the session. So there are 2 steps before you can make a peer-to-peer connection. By equivalence, the same is true for a gateway message. It's just that they're called a different thing. So in the message, any message that you intend to send via gateway is called a Winlink message. And then you go into a gateway session, and they're called Packet Winlink, Vara FM Winlink. And I know many of you are thinking, well, it's all Winlink, and that's absolutely right. Just understand that the nomenclature is, if it says Winlink message and Packet Winlink or Vara FM Winlink, it's a gateway message. And if you have a peer-to-peer message, you need to define it both in the message as peer-to-peer, and you need to be in a P2P session. And we'll show you what that looks like. And we'll also show you that the message addressed to the same person will not actually go if you don't do that. And peer-to-peer message. This is what a peer-to-peer message looks like. Again, we just talked about this. Let me put up the pointer again. In this case, we define it as a peer-to-peer message. You enter your address, W2JCL, KN6BKT, and you can send to multiple people. As you see, you cannot CC to anybody, but you can send to multiple people. And what it does is it takes one message you write, and after you hit post to outbox, it explodes it to, let's say if it's, in this case, 2 people to 2 people, but you could have 15, 16 people. And then the problem would be solved, right? And then you click post to outbox. A little note on that. If you use a template, Winlink has a tendency to reset this to Winlink message. And you see the Winlink message right up here on top. This is a gateway-oriented message, and it will not transmit on peer-to-peer. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind, you can't use tactical calls, only base call signs for peer-to-peer. The peer-to-peer session, and this is what it looks like. Here are your options. Right, take on the pointer. You can see all these peer-to-peer sessions here at the bottom. Packet, peer-to-peer, Pactor, robust packet. We already talked about that. Vara, and Vara means Vara HF, not Vara FM. If you get a little bit experience, you can actually hear the difference. And sometimes people get so excited about sending the message, they go into Vara peer-to-peer, not Vara FM peer-to-peer when you're on VHF. And you kind of have to gently remind them to switch on over. And Telnet peer-to-peer means if you're on a network or if you have Arden Mesh, you can actually send a peer-to-peer message there too, which of course is different from the Winlink gateway session selections above. By the way, and I want to point that out too, and we'll show you what that works, the open session in the top left next to where it says Vara FM peer-to-peer is actually a button. So this is what you need to click on in order to open your session. Peer-to-peer sessions can be direct. In most cases, they will be direct, especially if you're using Packet. So you select whether you want to do direct or digipeater, or if you have a script. Some of you have very elaborate systems out there, and you can do peer-to-peer via several packet hops. Just keep in mind it's a store and forward system. Every hop essentially doubles the amount of time that it takes to get there. So just keep that in mind. In our case, we use mostly direct. We do use digipeaters every now and again. But all you do here, and I want to remind you of this, is enter the call sign of the station you want to connect to. And then you click start. And if they're in the same session, you're ready to rock and roll. Digipeaters are right now only available for Packet. They may or may not become available for Vara FM, but right now only available for Packet. And please verify that you're on the correct frequency and listen before you click start. And with that, we're already in the exercise part of this. At this point, are there any questions?
Ollie, this is Dan.
Hey, Dan.
How are you doing? I think I've talked to you about this, but I don't remember what your response was. Are you purposely not using FM repeaters for Vara FM for peer-to-peer in situations where that would be appropriate and you have a repeater sysop who's understanding?
You can absolutely use a repeater for Vara FM. That's absolutely no problem. The reason we don't do that in SoCal is twofold. One, most of our large repeater systems are linked, so there's too much latency for that to work. And two, the ones that aren't linked usually don't like us doing digital on their repeaters.
Okay, well, yeah, like I said, the caveat was built into the question. If you have a system who's willing. Okay,
right.
Thanks.
So, I mean, I definitely encourage you to try that. And again, because you're running relatively short bursts of data, it actually makes it a lot easier. So let me share my second screen here, and then we'll go straight into the live demonstration.
One moment, Oscar.
Oliver, this is Clem. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Oliver, Clem, 87HO. I noticed that on your signal link, you had narrow. If I use a signal link and I did get the license for the wide for Vara FM, if I use a signal link on Vara FM, would I be able to go wide using signal link versus the RA card, which I do have, the RA boards?
Good question. And the answer is maybe. It depends. If your signal link was purchased in the last 2 years and it has two black transformers instead of the red ones, then the answer is yes, you would. I found with my Kenwood it's almost impossible to drive the signal link on Vara FM wide. But the answer is yes. You can just open up your signal link, take a look inside. If the transformers are red, then they won't support wide. If they are black, then yes, they will support wide. And they're currently doing some experimentation. I've been talking with Jason about that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I need to jump in here for just a second, and that is, Instead of everybody just jumping in to ask questions, because we're going to start doubling here if we keep doing this. Let's start using the raise hand thing. Below your participants deal is a place where you can raise your hand, and we'll get you as quickly as possible. Okay, well, back to you, Oliver.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'll share my other screen here, and for whatever reason, I cannot seem to share my entire screen on this. Don't know why, but that's okay. Well, we'll just go one step at a time, all right? And I'll fill you in as we go. And I just want to show you that it's relatively easy to do. So let me get out of my session here, and I'll just show you an example as we go. Let's make sure the frequency is clear. Is this frequency in use? This is K6LI. Is this frequency in use? This is K6LI.
K6OLI, this is AC6LS. I've been monitoring the station and you're free to use it.
Thank you so much, Lou. K6LI. All right, so we're going through here. We're going through a new message, and I may have to go in and out here because for some reason I can't seem to. Let's see what happens. Let's say you want to send, all right, this works. Let's say you want to send a check-in, right? Pretty much something that happens all the time. And we definitely recommend that you use the templates here available, and there are tons of them. Last time when we did the basics, we showed you how to write a regular message. This time we'll show you how to use a template. You can go to standard templates, and we highly recommend this. Go to general forms. Oops, general forms. And then at the bottom, you've got a generic Winlink check-in. You can double click on that or click select on top. And of course, now I need to stop the share and move over to the other window so you can see. I need to double check these settings. All right. So up here, you actually can set up your own agency. Let's say, in our case, Aries LAX. You can click OK. You can click on this, add your own name and time. Say this is a exercise or net check-in, VHF. And let's say we're doing this on Vara FM. And I'm sending this to KN6BKT. And I could send that to a couple of people. AC6LS. It doesn't matter what I enter here. What matters is what goes into the message later. And this is from me, the original operator. And my location, let's say, is Arlington, which is the tactical name we use. One of the things we don't do, for instance, in Aries LAX, we don't use the actual hospital names for exercises. It's very counterproductive. We also don't use any real names or real phone numbers on our exercises. The only time we do that is during the statewide medical health exercise. And next, we've got comments. You can do all kinds of comments, ready to deploy in 2 hours, for example, right? You click submit, click OK. And I gotta stop the share and move you over to the other one again. So bear with me. All right, and you see how this populated the field. It actually put KN6BKT already in there for us and AC6LS. And here is the Winlink message. Remember how I said we want to send this as a peer-to-peer message? Now we need to define it as a peer-to-peer message. And as you can see in the back here, let me move this to the side. There are 0 messages in my outbox. Can you all see that? Somebody nod?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we've done that. We've addressed it. We've told it it's a peer-to-peer message. Now we click post to outbox. And now in our outbox, there are two messages. We only wrote one check-in, but we addressed it to two people, remember? Now we've got two check-ins that are ready to be sent to the outside. In that case, we select our peer-to-peer session. Let's go with Vara FM peer-to-peer. And we open the session. And we pray that that shows up on this screen. And it does not. Let me see. Let me stop the share, see whether I can share that with you. Okay. You know, they usually tell you don't do live sessions. It does not want to show this. All right. But no problem. The beauty of this is, of course, you can't see my session window right now, and I would love to show you that. But the beauty of this is I don't have to show that to you. All right. Let's see whether we can demonstrate first how the message is being picked up. KN6BKT, K6OLI. Go ahead and please pick up the check-in.
Affirmative. Stand by for digital traffic, Vara FM, peer-to-peer.
And in this case, it asked me, do I want to download his message? Absolutely. So he's pushing a message to me, and as you can see, he's actually picking up the message as we're speaking. And there you have it. You just saw how Tom picked up his message and he pushed the message to me. So let me show you that. That's the message that Tom just sent to me, KN6BKT. I can tell it's a peer-to-peer message because in recipient it says K6OLI peer-to-peer. So this did not come through gateway. And of course, when you click on it, it automatically opens up the system. And let me switch that over. So stop the share. Share the screen again. And here's a resource request that Tom just sent. And you can see the data that he's sent. If we had to do this on voice, this would take a lot of time. And this was actual traffic we sent during our statewide medical health exercise last year. So please keep that in mind. This is one of the things, and this is, by the way, the official resource request that the county wants us to send. Nice feature here. It gives you the express sending station, so we always know who sent it. And you don't have to enter that at all. It's done automatically. So it's a very, very powerful tool. So let's do the same thing, and let me see whether I can show you what it looks like on Vara FM, AC6LS from K6OLI.
K6OLI, just use AC6LS.
Would you please go ahead and connect with me, and I'll demonstrate the Vara FM window. Go ahead.
Copy that. 1 sec.
So in this case, you can see AC6LS at the bottom left here is connecting with me, K6OLI. It's a pretty good connection here in the diagram. You can see it's relatively narrow, and the more narrow that is, usually the better the connection is. At the bottom, you can see we're connected at 2253 bits per second, and with very short messages, it usually doesn't go that fast. When you see the big difference is whenever you have large messages that need a long time to send. And he's got quite a few messages for me. So the same window popped up, and now you can see the speed increase here at the bottom to level 6, 6,720 bits per second. You can see the red is the transmit, the green's the receive. And that was it, 3 messages sent. Let me stop the share and.
K6OLI, this is AC6LS. I show 3 messages sent and 1 message received.
AC6LS from K6OLI, confirm 1 message sent, 3 received. K6OLI. And here you can see Lou sent a check-in. And he sent a check-in that we made up for Aries LAX. It's kind of a quick check-in because we have very often the same kind of information going in there. And we do have our own checkout that we put in. And you can write those yourself, by the way, and it auto-fills some of these in here. And he also sent a resource request. So it makes it super easy to actually do this. And obviously, in this case, I didn't initiate any of these sessions. I could have initiated the sessions, but I didn't initiate any of these sessions because in this case, I was net control. It was easier for them to just come and push their messages to me and then pick it up. But the voice really is what makes this work. Let's see whether Mike's on there. KM6KQ from K6OLI.
K6OLI from KM6KQ.
Go ahead and send your traffic, please.
Roger that. Stand by a moment.
K6OLI. So what you can see here is it's pretty straightforward to do this as a peer-to-peer session. Now, let me see. Well, let's have Mike send his session. The beauty were voice nets the same way. This is really easy to add the digital. It's extremely powerful to add the digital to this on a peer-to-peer basis. In fact, and we'll talk about that next week, in fact, it's really practical to actually have a portable gateway as well, where you set that up in the field and you actually have a system that connects all the different modes to a portable station. Our philosophy is always, if you don't bring it, you don't have it. Because the hospital may have a great station, radio station set up, but it may not be what we need. It may not have been updated. Maybe a battery went dead. So we're operating under the assumption that you didn't bring it, you don't have it. And our peer-to-peer net, again, is, as you saw with the voice net control, is super practical. Are you doing voice and digital on the same frequency as Jack NF1L? Absolutely. Especially on VHF, UHF, it's super easy to do. In fact, it's easier this way because you actually hear when something's wrong with the signal. And experienced net controls can usually tell, oh, you're either off frequency or, you know, there's a problem using Vara peer-to-peer instead of Vara FM peer-to-peer. So it helps people become, like, move up this technology curve much faster. Do we print the forms out? Absolutely. KM6KQ, K6OLI, did you call?
Ready whenever you are.
Go right ahead, K6OLI. So yes, we're on the same frequency right now. In our case, it's just 144.420. And what you'll see again here is this simplex or through repeater? Right now, this is simplex because we found that simplex is great exercise for everybody involved. You can see he's sending his check-in. Yeah. Let me download that. When sending a form, can you cut and paste? Absolutely. Let me show you how that works. And again, for whatever reason, I cannot share my entire screen with you. That would make life a lot easier. KN6BKT, this is K6OLI. I'll be clearing the frequency for your net, K6OLI. So let's talk a little bit more about forms. And I'll just walk you through that real quick, and then we'll take questions, and Tom can start his net in peace. Stop the share. Well, let's share the screen. Let me walk you through this. So again, we start a new message. I'll show you a couple of cool features here. Start a new message. We select a template. Let's say a standard template. ICS templates, pretty much everybody on this net right now or on this Zoom is familiar with ICS forms. Here are the hospital ICS forms, and we strongly, strongly encourage you to use these. I know there's a temptation to have special forms for every county and whatnot. Just keep in mind, the more we all work on the same forms, the easier it is. So please keep that in mind as we go. If you wanted to send an ICS 213, for example, and I think you're all familiar with that. And again, bear with me, I need to stop the share and reshare. All right. You're all familiar with the ICS 213 form, pretty standard form, right? Could I paste anything in here? Absolutely. And at the bottom left here, you also see the ICS 213 initial data. You can save it. So if you are at a specific location, you could actually save a template for yourself. Or if you're sending certain data over and over again, you can do that. Or if you want to do a demonstration like we're doing tonight, you can load ICS 213 initial data. And let's say we've got the ICS neonatal order. And some of you who were in Puerto Rico will find this very, very familiar. This is, you know, Oscar can probably talk about that if he wants to at the next meeting. But essentially, again, this is information that was actually sent during Puerto Rico. Can I control X something here and move it out? Absolutely. Can I move it back in like any other data? Control V. Absolutely. I can put it right in there, so I can take it from any other source. In Aries LAX, some of the hospitals have gone over to putting the information on USB drives. They don't want our computers connected to the internal networks. And by the way, we strongly recommend that you air gap all amateur radio equipment from hospital or any agency computers. Don't let your equipment touch their equipment. It's a recipe for disaster as far as we're concerned. So they actually have a one-way USB thing. They put their messages on USB sticks, hand it to the radio operator. The radio operator sends it and then puts this USB stick in a bag, and they give him another USB stick. And then they can either destroy it afterwards, or they can have somebody scan it for security risks. But that's pretty much it, you know. You can do this with pretty much all the information here. You can click submit. And if you're missing a field, like we're doing right here, it actually will remind you. So it won't let you to submit anything. So let's say he's the chief surgeon. And this is good exercise. Then we go and submit this form. We'll click OK. It posts the form, and again, stop the share, and we reshare. All right, and in this case, you know, again, I've got the same options. If you're sending it through Gateway, I could send this to a tactical call sign. In our case, in LA, it would be the LA County Medical Alert Center. That's the tactical call sign that it has. And, or I could send it to another call, AC6LS, oops, LS, and I could send it through Gateway. I have that option again, right? Message receipts. We're not big fans of message receipts. We usually ask our people to get a voice confirmation that the message has been received and read. All this says is that's been received. Sometimes your agency may be looking over your shoulder, and here's looking at you, San Diego. Thanks for the tip. But your agency may be looking at the shoulder and they want something written. So you can actually ask for a message receipt so you've got something in writing. Doesn't mean somebody actually looked at it on the other end. It just means that it has been received. And of course, a couple of things you can set here, defaults. If you're doing exercises, you can do default CC addresses. That can be a call sign, that can be an internet address. So I could put in k6oli@arrl.net, and pretty much everything I email will also be sent to that email address, right? I can default the sending mode, which is really practical. If you have a peer-to-peer net, then you just do the peer-to-peer message as a default sending mode, and then all your messages will automatically be peer-to-peer unless you change them. And that's all there is to it, right? Let's just cancel out of this. And at this point, we can either post to Outbox or we can save in drafts. And let's do that with this. By the way, up here, you can also set up a couple of short, quick links. In our case, in Aries LX case, this is the hospital status assessment, which is essentially bed availability report. We've got our check-ins and check-outs, and we've got our resource requests. You can do anything there. It could be an ICS 213. It could be a weather report. Let me show you a couple of other options here before we move on to questions. Hurricane season is upon us. So there's a hurricane report here. There's a local weather report. Quite a few of you will probably do severe weather reporting. So those forms are already available for you. Of course, earthquake country, the did you feel it report. Not something for peer-to-peer. By the way, you can send all of these as peer-to-peer or as Winlink gateway messages. Doesn't matter. You just have to address them properly. And then there are a couple of other radiograms. If you want to do radiograms on Winlink, absolutely. There are medical forms here. Try those out. Patient reports, hospital bed reports, generic ones, and hospital status, very practical. And of course, FEMA forms and ARRL forms and a couple of ARC Red Cross forms. All right. So with that, I think we've showed you quite a bit for this session. I hope you see the value and enjoy the value of peer-to-peer. We showed you some gateway last time, and next time we'll dive deeper into gateways, what it takes to do when you would want to use a gateway and what it takes to set up a gateway. And then we'll answer your questions about that. At this point, I can see that pretty much everybody's still awake. That's always a good sign. In that case, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to stand by and see whether I can answer them.
Good evening. This is Ed86SR. And the question I have is, you mentioned that on the winlink.org website, there's a lot of information related to this. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. In fact, let me share the screen up here and I'll show you because I already added some of that information to the slides you'll be getting in a little bit. So here are the Winlink groups on Google. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I strongly recommend, if you have any interest in Winlink, that you subscribe to both of these groups. They're very active. People are very helpful. I learn a lot from them all the time. It's Winlink group, programs group, and Winlink for MCOM. Great if you have questions. And by the way, Marty Wall, who many of you know, highly experienced operator, lots of HFs, done a lot of DXing. He and I had a conversation. I've never dealt with an AM857 Yaesu before. And he said, well, what are the settings? I went to one of these groups. I found the settings and I copied them on it. And 15 minutes later, I get an email, a Winlink email from him saying, boy, that worked really well. Because if you do have a great HF setup, it makes it really easy to add Winlink to your repertoire. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is more Winlink resources. Winlink has a fantastic frequently asked questions file. put together by Don Felgenhauer, K7BFL. And, you know, kudos to Don for doing this. He keeps this updated. It's updated on a regular basis. This is the latest one as far as I know. And any question you may have on tactical addresses, on, you know, how do I set up different networks? Can I use a tactical address for this, but not something else? There's likely to be an answer. And if you have a PDF viewer, just hit Control Foxtrot, Control F, and look for what you're looking for. 95 to 98% of your questions will be answered by this. Great thing. The other thing, and I strongly recommend, is to go to the Book of Knowledge. There are tons of great links there on how to set up signal links, how to, you know, do how to use it with mesh and so on. And then the how-to recipes are a subsection of the Winlink Book of Knowledge. And again, a lot of how-to information. And that'll be part of the system that of the handouts that we'll send you. And
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Okay, I'm gonna need to jump in here for just a second. We need to get back to using those raised hands so we don't have any doubling going on. I see Don's got his hand raised, so let's go with Don.
Don, I think you need to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, well, yeah, it wasn't working. Anyway, you mentioned the hospital would give you like a flash drive, and that would be a one-time use. How is that imported into the message or the forms? What is that? How is that populated into the form?
Let me see whether I can share the screen on this, where I can share my entire screen on this, because this is a, no, for whatever reason, I cannot share any of my entire screens here. So, because I would love to show you the workflow. How about we work on this for next week? Because it's literally cut and paste, and there. Let me tell you this right now. Greg KG6SJT, who wrote most of these forms, is a genius when it comes to this. He has a parsing function. So you can copy information from a spreadsheet and parse it into, if you have the headers and the columns right into the form, and it takes seconds. One of the things that we had a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, in an exercise was the hospital wanted to try a patient tracking form, a HICS 254. And the operator figured, well, there is a form for that. He looked at the columns, they were identical, and he just parsed it over. It took him 2 minutes to do, another minute to send it, unpack it, and in 3 minutes he was done. And the hospital administrators looked over his shoulder, said, wait, you already sent these 20 names? He's like, yep. So it can be done, it's easy to do, and we'll look forward to showing that to you next week. How about that? Would that be acceptable? Don?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay, well, we'll get that. We got that sharing squared away.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like John, you're up.
Okay, how do you after you get the information, what do you do with it? Do you print it out, hand it off to the hospital, or how does that work?
That depends on your agency. In our case, yes, we print everything. In fact, we bring our own printers when we go to the MAC, because we need to keep their system secure. For them, amateur radio operators are always an unknown, right? They don't know what else we do with our computers, whether we're safe, whether there's some elaborate hack. What was that? The I love you virus, and people get really excited about this. Just in our case, yes, everything is printed out. If lives were at stake, like hundreds of lives were at stake, chances are, we'd probably work out an arrangement with them. But at this point, it's all printed out, and they hand enter everything in our case. It may be different for different agencies, but this is how it works for us. And by the way, I find it a great compliment when your agency asks you to slow down.
That's true. I was curious because I see what you're doing, and it's like, okay, how do you get the information passed along?
Yeah, and it's just that we've done it, that we printed it up on PDFs, we put it in spreadsheets again. But again, for them, it's a big risk to take to take a USB stick or let you on the network, on their internal network. And that's absolutely legitimate. If I were on the agency side, I also would not let volunteers play around with data where you have patient information, where you have county information and secure. I mean, we all need to be, as amateur radio operators, we all need to be very mindful and respectful of the environment, especially the IT environment that our agencies operate in. There are targets, and some of you I know have backgrounds in this. Our agencies are targets in a lot of ways, and we do not want to bring the problem to them. We want to bring the solutions to them. But good question. Yeah.
Jim, you're up.
Okay, this is Jim, N2JLF from Bergen County, New Jersey. Actually, I'm Fairlawn Aries. What you showed me today is excellent because we don't have an RMS station in this area. And we've been trying to hook up VHF and do an experiment. In fact, we're going to pull one off this weekend. So where is Vara FM? Is that part of Winlink or is that a separate program we have to download? I mean, what is that all about?
It's at rusmodem.wordpress.com. And, you know, the link is on the website, and, you know, it's just, it's also in the handouts, and we'll send you an extended handout with the information on this. So you'll have the link on there as well, and the setup instructions and all that. Just a reminder, you can use Vara without having a key. The key only unlocks the higher speeds. So keep that in mind. And the key covers both, if you decide to buy one, covers both HF and FM for as many installations of your call sign as you, so it covers, in my case, K6OLI, K6OLI-1, -2, -3, etc. And so that's a really neat setup. And if you are an MCOM group and have 10 or more people, if you decide Vara is for you, you can get a discounted price. So it's $69 retail if you want to do the higher speed upgrade. And it's about $50 because it's PayPal. You probably wind up charging people $53 to $55 to cover the costs of, because some people, anyways. But so the retail price is $69. It's still at $55. It'd be a good deal.
Yeah, that's okay if we can get this up and running. One last question. So you said that works simplex and over the repeaters. What did you say about digipeaters? This doesn't work on that, or you got to use something different?
Yeah, Vara FM does not support any digipeating at present. In fact, if you want to set up a gateway, we recommend that you stay off any active packet frequencies because you don't want to have packets and Vara at the same time. So in our case, it's relatively easy because we only have one main packet frequency. So we found two frequencies, digi frequencies that weren't used. And we put our Vara gateways on those. And yes, our gateways also support packet, because we like to have those options, but it took quite a bit of training for people to get into this and listen first, then transmit. The difference is, and let me point this out real quick, packet, and some of you have a lot of experience with this and can probably explain this better, but packet can support several streams at once. So 3, 4 packet stations, they'll just find the slots and they'll work it out. But Vara is sequential. So one Vara station connects and sends traffic, then the next one does. And what you don't want is packet and Vara blocking each other because they throw each other for a loop. If you do it sequentially, not a problem. But if you do it at the same time, you start getting issues. And by the way, UC7HO has a digipeater built in. So any one of your peer-to-peer stations can become a digipeater with a single line change. If you want to, I'll show you that next time. And we actually use that to bring in our friends in San Fernando Valley who are behind the hills from us. They digipede through one of our higher stations. Just using sound modem, nothing else. It's really cool.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Jim. Colin, you want to come on?
Yes, please. Thank you. I mean, Vara looks really neat, but the only client for it is a Windows client, right? and a proprietary client on top of that. I was looking at the documentation that is available. What is the website? rossmodem.wordpress.com. I understand to be the developer of Vara, but the only specification in there was for the Vara HF modem specification, which is not incredibly detailed. And I'm working on implementing the Vara spec for WLT2K Go, which is the Go server for the PAT front end for Winlink, and was wondering, like, is there somewhere that I can find more information on the actual specification? Because the only spec that's there is for the HF modem, not, which I assume is the same for FM from what I've been able to gather. But that's
not really. I mean, they're very similar, but they're not the same. So they work slightly different. And the best person to talk to is reach out to Jose directly. I think it's Nieto Ross. And if I recall correctly, he's going to be a speaker on here in the next couple of weeks, right, Oscar and Dan? Yep. So you can ask him directly.
Okay. Yeah. Very interested in that because with the deprecation of WinWar, I know a lot of the repeaters in our area are moving over to Vara. Don't want to be left out as a non-Windows user.
Yeah, and again, RDOP will continue to work on, and it's built in. But let me tell you, I think pretty much everybody, and when we started with Vara, especially with Vara FM, we actually had to trick Winlink into thinking that Vara FM was Vara HF to make this work. And kudos to people like Lou, AC6LS, and some of the people in our group, because they went out there and said, okay, we'll buy these licenses and we'll try it out. And it was a lot of fun. But I mean, the point is, it's a developing story, and if you have any ideas of how you want to, or how you think it can be improved, be part of that conversation. I think you'll find this is one of those really rewarding things about this, because a lot of things, the way I just showed you, didn't exist a year ago. So keep that in mind. And once you start using Vara, I think the speed speaks for itself. We enjoy using Packet because there are lots of packet stations out there. Again, it does digipeating. So it's a powerful system, but if you need speed, and we had a net 2 weeks ago where I received 57 messages in under an hour. And that doesn't include the 17 messages I sent out to the stations in that peer-to-peer net. And there are not a lot of systems that can support that. And you think about it, all I had to bring was my station, and right now I'm running off battery. So this is my Go kit. But good question, and please be part of the conversation.
Thanks.
I'd like to take a break from the hand thing and go to Lee, if you're available there, Lee, and see if there's anything in the chat we should be responding to.
Most questions are asked and answered. There are a couple of comments, such as from Doug, W4DBL. Both stations have to have the same form if you need to populate it at the receive end. Otherwise, you just get text.
They have to have the same version of the form, or you just get the text. So keep it. And this is why we're big fans of having weekly, bi-weekly, monthly nets. And we also are big fans of doing more than just a check-in net. Check-ins are deceiving because they're small messages and they usually work. You will run, and like we did when we started out sending agency traffic, 213s, all of a sudden, hospital bed reports, all of a sudden, medical, we started running into problems almost immediately, and fixing those led to a lot of the development that you're seeing right now. So make it as real as you can, and you can make it fun. Hey, last year for Halloween, we did a cycle of a zombie apocalypse. And Halloween last year, that was pretty funny. Now that we're living in the zombie apocalypse, because it's a virus thing, right? It's not as funny anymore. So this year, I'm hoping for Sharknado, and for Halloween. So just to keep it light, right? But the point here is understand the closer you get that to reality, and what you do, perfectly fine. But keep it engaging, but practice what you actually expect, because things will go wrong. And they'll go wrong for people who are very experienced. We once had a net when we had, it was a later net and was 8 check-ins, and usually check-ins work. My station is just running really, and we had 8 check-ins and not a single one went through. And they all panicked and just looked at their stations, and then I looked at my signal link, the power button was off. So I elegantly asked them to check in again after they had fixed their problems, right? All of them went through, and then I kind of sheepishly said, well, and it helps if my power button is on too. And then there was big laughter, but you know, I'll do that at the end of a successful, you know, revolution. Don't say, oh my God, it's like, but you know, just have a sense of humor with this, because let's face it, if any of us have ever to do this for real, it won't be fun. We'll be out there for 12 hours at a time, couple of hours off. So, all right.
Thank you, Oliver.
Morley?
Yeah, one more. Can you address the narrow versus wide in Vara? The question is, if one station has the listen to Vara wide, will the session be on wide, or do both stations have to be on that?
They both go with the smallest bandwidth. So if, let's say, I've got the Alinco set on wide, and let's say I'm using the signal link on my Kenwood, right? Then, and that's on narrow, the session would be narrow, because the wide station would automatically adjust to the narrow part. If both of them are wide, it would select wide. And at this point, I would also like to point out something. Just because on Vara FM wide, you can send 100K in under a minute, doesn't mean that's necessarily the best thing to do for the network. If your assumption is, and think about this before you get into this, because you don't want to habituate people to something that may not be realistic. If you're thinking that you're going to move traffic outside of your area via HF, do not have any forms, any files larger than 5K, because you're shutting down those HF gateways for a long, long time. So keep that in mind. You need to think downstream. How does it get from where I am to where the endpoint is? It may be that you and the RMS gateway have a Vara-wide connection, but the RMS gateway then may turn it over to tri-mode and try to forward it through HF. And that takes a long time, and it might break your equipment, because again, remember, these modes are 80 to 100% duty cycle. The shorter your messages, the easier it is on your equipment, and on the gateways especially.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions about how you handle HIPAA.
Aries LAX, just like pretty much all Aries, is pretty much immune from HIPAA. We don't initiate any of this traffic, and that's the position the county takes. Let me tell you, when we did the Higgs 254 last year as a sample, and it was all Disney characters, I thought our county contact would get a heart attack when he saw that, because we're not on the hook. They are, the hospitals and the county. So the only time they're really happy to see this is when it's really life and death, and the rules, the regular rules, don't apply. And again, I could not tell them, listen, Donald Duck is not a real character, right? So it's just one of those things. Keep that in mind. We want to send what they're comfortable with, but we don't initiate any traffic. The hospital tells us what to send. The MAC tells us what to send. But just like Verizon, you know, it's like, we're just the conduit.
Okay, I have two more. One of them is, Oliver, can you post details about your Winlink Go box or some of the others?
Yeah, actually, I would strongly recommend, and we do that once a year, usually in December, where we have a Go Box Palooza. Probably not this year, because it's doubtful that we're going to get to meet this year, but where people bring out their Go boxes, and I can post a couple of pictures, and people are very creative, and everybody, we usually tell people, start with what you have. You'd be surprised how much of your equipment can actually work with us. But yeah, we can post some stuff.
Okay, and the last one I have is, are there delays built into the Telnet Winlink sessions? Seems like Telnet message I send is delayed by hours.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I use Telnet all the time, and it's almost immediate.
Okay.
So there's no delay built in, as far as I know.
Okay. I'll follow up with that participant and see if there's any further questions. Thank you, Oliver.
Okay. Thank you, Lee.
Okay, Doug, you want to take it away?
All right, turn the microphone back on, that helps. I'm going to be stupid here for a second, Oliver. I've got Vara HF, Vara FM, and a couple of different radios and a couple of different computers, and I've had zero luck actually making this thing work. Now, one radio with the exact same settings, two identical radios, same settings on a radio and a computer. One of them I key transmit, one of them I don't. But that's an aside. But this goes back to the basics. If I'm running Vara FM through the computer and I'm running to a Yaesu FTM 400, for example, not a ICOM, which makes it a little easier, or Kenwood. So I'm running to the 400 because it's a dual VFO radio. So I've got voice on one side, I've got data on another one. I can monitor both. What do you put between the computer and Vara, the computer, and the radio? Does UZ7HO function as the sound card for that, or do I need to add something in between?
No, you don't need. You can run UC7HO and Vara FM at the same time off the same sound card.
Okay.
So you don't need any extra equipment for that. And that's the beauty of this. So you don't need to unplug, let's say, with the Contronics. And I love my Contronics, don't get me wrong. We use it for the AC100 Ultra arrays all the time because it's kind of a network system. But understand that the beauty of this is of UC7HOs, you can leave that running while you're doing Vara in the background and then switch just the session and problem solved.
Well, my question is, if I'm running Vara through to the radio, is UZ7HO even a factor?
No, just sits there.
Because I've got a KPC3 as well, and if I'm using it, it goes straight through the KPC3 and then goes to the radio.
But I mean, Lou AC6LS, who just picked up the traffic here, right? He was actually using an FTM 400, right, Lou?
Yeah, affirmative. I'm using an FTM 400 and I have no problems.
I may come visit you when I see my daughter-in-law next.
Okay. Come on down.
I may need a visa to get into California the way things are going, though.
Well, right now we're auditioning for a fourth rider of the apocalypse, right? We've got the earthquake, we've got the pandemic, and we've got the fires right now all over the place. So, we don't know what the fourth one will be. Well, it'll be something, probably drivers, California drivers,
When I lived on the northern end of the valley in Fairfield, we used to say we were going to have oceanfront property after the earthquake. I'll shut up, Dan. Let somebody else talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
And feel free to reach out if there's something we could do. Right.
All right. Let's go off here to W6LIK.
Midge. My question, first of all, thank you for a wonderful, wonderful session, and especially for the references to get further information. My question is, peer-to-peer, they're waiting for the message you communicate. What if someone else comes in and tries to send either whoever's going to receive the message or you a message? Does it alter the message? Does it cause damage, or what happens? Did you understand?
So you're sitting there, you've got your session open, and somebody else wants to send you a message, right?
While you're sending to your primary person.
Oh, no, it just, I see. The interference, would that block the message?
Well, just like when you're on the frequency, somebody jams in and it gets it interrupts things.
It would interrupt the flow, but it wouldn't destroy the message. The nice thing about Winlink is it's 100% or not at all. And if it's not at all, you have to find a different path. But the beauty of it is it does tell you, I didn't send this message. And then we found other ways of sending it, switching frequencies, and that does happen, so it's a great question. And yes, absolutely. Just keep in mind, part of what makes amateur radio emergency service or amateur radio so powerful is that we actually get to choose how we send the message. And if it's not one way, it's another. And we'll keep going until that message goes through. And yes, interference is a natural way of life with amateur radio operator, but it doesn't destroy the message.
I just wonder during a crisis when everybody gets panicky, if it would just stop everything.
No, well, just again, it's like that theory. We had that discussion here with people buying these thousands of Baofangs out there. Am I worried about that? No, because have you ever tried to hand program one of these? So good luck trying to switch frequencies if you're not familiar with it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a non-issue. And part of the reason why we do have regular exercises is to get to know each other and to practice for these things, because it will happen. We will have to switch frequencies. We will have to switch bands. Whatever it takes to get that message through. That's what we'll do.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, you want to take it?
Yeah, thank you. So, Ollie, do you remember the screen back there where you had the URLs for the two Google groups for, I think it was Winlink for MCOM or Winlink for programs?
Yeah, it's not that long ago, Dan.
You're a young man.
I'm getting older, but not that old.
Well, there's a Google groups for Vara, and it is named Vara HF. However, there's more Vara FM questions and answers in that than HF, as it were.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out, and it's a great group. There are also a couple of groups on the Winmore group. Now is becoming kind of a all mode group on groups.io. So there are a couple of really fun groups out there, and people are monitoring them on a regular basis. Again, you cannot but learn. So we doing Aries in particular, and I'm sure each and every one of your emergency groups is a learning organization. We keep learning, we keep evolving. In 4 or 5 years, there's probably something else that we're using on a regular basis. And that's what we need to do, because we're trying to protect our communities.
Well, I function on the theory that I'm not smart enough to come up with unique problems. So if I can find these groups and study enough, I'll get the answers. Another thing about HIPAA, everybody's worried about HIPAA, but in an EMS environment, you're not transmitting personally identifiable information about the patient. I mean, I can't see that becoming a problem unless you go way out of your way to make it one.
Then we've had that discussion here umpteen times in a lot of ways. For Aries, we actually asked the county, and they said, you don't have to worry about it, we have to worry about it. And the simple fact of the matter is we are passing the traffic they tell us to pass. What we don't want is an amateur radio operator telling hospital or county staff what they can and cannot send. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not a way for success. We want to work with them, and if they tell us they sent, by the way, at the bottom, remember that ICS 213 where it said authorized by? That's where their name goes. That's not where our name goes. This is not sent by Oliver K6LI. It has my call sign in the bottom as in term where they say, okay, this is the originating station. But it's not me who actually went out there and looked at the data and got the information and sent it out. I have no right handling patient data. My day job's in finance.
Looking at the Hicks forms in Winlink, none of them have patient name anywhere.
Actually, they do. Check the Hicks 254, because let me tell you, the first time we saw that, we panicked.
Okay, well that
you know,
would be a good reason. But if it's a patient name without at least 2 other attributes that are unique to that name, there's nothing to worry about.
The beauty is, and again, in terms of a concept, if they asked us, and this is what happened to Mike, the hospital asked because it was part of their exercise plan to send this. And they had talked to their legal department. They had said, okay, if all else fails, can we do this? And he sent what they asked him to send. And he put their name, and he explained to them before he sent it that none of this is encrypted. Are you aware of that? It's like, yes. And he sent it.
Okay, now you see, you just broke into the big brother of the HIPAA question, which is if an agency gives you something that they've encrypted, it's only going to be encrypted by the appropriate people in that agency on the receiving end. There's nothing in Part 97 that says don't send it. I'm going to stop right there.
That's just, yeah, we could spend hours on this.
No, we can't. I have too much of my life gone into that.
Okay, I appreciate the time factor. Lee, you got anything going on over there?
I do. I appreciate the HIPAA discussion. There were quite a few questions about that, and we have a question about, can we use our laptop sound cards, or do we really need to add something like the signal link box to properly drive our radios?
On Vara FM, you could use your laptop sound card if it's properly grounded. Would I do that? Probably not. I'm a big fan of external sound cards. They make life a lot easier. You can move them around. And again, you get into the whole drive issues. By the way, in any of these groups, there are actually projects where you can build your own sound card if you want to, getting these $5 dongles off of your favorite online store. So if you're into building, there are ways of doing this in inexpensive ways and having fun with this. So you don't have to go with a commercial option. KC70, for instance, here, he built a really nice box, had a 3D thing built, but it was all him building it. So, you know, can you do that? Absolutely.
All right, thank you. You keep mentioning session. What is a session in Winlink?
A session in Winlink is that window that pops up that, here, let me see what I can show you on this computer real quick. Let me just bring this up. Right here, tools, and there's my Winlink Express. The nice thing about using something like a signal link or an RA board is, let me see, is that you can actually use it for all kinds of fun software that you may not be able to use it otherwise. So let me see. Okay, you see this window, right? And it says Vara FM peer-to-peer. These are your session selections here. Up here are the gateway selections. And down here are the peer-to-peer selections. And at the very end down here is your Telnet post office. That's for Arden Mesh, right? All right, let's say if I wanted to start a Vara FM peer-to-peer session, I will click on this. And I will click on this button here, Open Session. And I don't know whether you can see this right now. Oh, yes, you can. Look at that. All right. So that's your session. Obviously, this computer isn't connected to a radio right now. The other one is. But this is your session window, and this is where you enter, like we talked about, KN6BKT for a peer-to-peer session. And the frequency, you can enter whatever you want. On FM, it doesn't matter. On HF, if you have CAT, computer-aided transceiver, then that actually matters, because when you change it here, it'll change in your system. And in this case, you could just start, and right now it won't go anywhere because there's nobody on the other end. But you click start, and that initiates your session. I would usually go on voice and tell them to expect traffic, right? And you can select, you can have favorites here. Let me go out of the peer-to-peer session and show you what it looks like if you're doing, this was Vara FM peer-to-peer. Let's say I wanted to hook up to a packet gateway. I would choose a packet Winlink session. And again, now we're going through a gateway. I click Open Session. And thanks for the question, because we're going over this again next week, but okay. Huh. I do not know why this doesn't show, because I see the session on my end. Let's see what happens with the Vara part.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that'll work better, right?
Yes.
All right. So you've got your session here, and this is now not a peer-to-peer session, right? It says Vara FM Winlink session. So this is aimed at a gateway. How do I know what gateway I want to access? I can go to channel selection, and I can find what gateways there are nearby. I can update this table via the internet and get the latest information. If I don't have access to the internet, I'm in the field. Let's say I'm in Puerto Rico. I could update the table via radio, would take longer. And then I can pick any one of these. Let's say KN6BKT is up and running, NR6V, I cannot hit those. But let's say K6CHY, it gives me his frequency, 147.070. And it gives me that's a narrow. The 1200 should be narrow in this case, right? And it says it's a public one. And I can select that and see how it filled in the information for me, K6CHY-10. The -10 tells me it's a gateway. It could be -11, it could be something else, but that's what tells me that it's a gateway. And it also fills in the frequency for me. Again, that doesn't mean anything on VHF, UHF, and those FM sessions, but it does mean something in the HF sessions. And by the way, the principle is exactly the same. Does that answer the question?
Thanks, Oliver. Yeah, that was great. That's exactly what I was looking for. I just kind of didn't understand what opening a session is, and it seems like it means you're starting the process of communicating using a specific mode, and then when you're done with that communication, you can then close the session. Am I right?
That's absolutely correct. And then if you want to push messages to some other station, you can click start, or if they have messages waiting for you, they tell you, you can click start, initiate the connection, and pull the messages to your computer. They don't even have to be around for that as long as they're in the same type session. But great question right there. And here are the, by the way, here are the settings. Let's just go through that real quick, as long as you can see that. Remember that was one of the slides. This is all preset here. You don't have to change any of this. The only thing you'll have to put in is where your Vara FM is located. It's pretty straightforward. And if you want to go to a different session, it's, again, the power of amateur radio. If you wanted to go to Vara HF, you do the exact same thing. Let's see. I don't know whether I have Vara HF installed on this particular computer, but. Okay, and again, it doesn't show you the session right now. I don't know why it doesn't, but let me see whether I find another option here. The good thing is I've got two computers now, so I see what works and what doesn't work. And again, I'm sorry, I can't show you, but I mean, it works exact same way with RDOP, Vara HF, and so on, and you can find your channels. And on HF, it actually gives you even an option to where it calculates how likely you are to hit that particular gateway in that area. And again, it's kind of cool because Evan WH2 ECG, he regularly connects from Hawaii to Alaska, Texas on 20 watts. So just as a radio amateur, you have a lot of options there. So I encourage you to play around with that. All right.
All right, thank you. I've got two last quick questions. In your examples, you used text files. Can you send files as attachments?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we tell our people is if there isn't a form in the templates, just do a text file and copy and paste it into either the message body or you use it as an attachment, whichever works. And you can do attachments. We usually turn Word documents into text files and Excel documents into comma-separated value files just to keep them small. But with Vara FM, you can send an Excel spreadsheet, no problem. So you can attach anything. And hopefully next week we can show you exactly how that is done. Plus, if you want to send image files, and I'm not saying it's a good idea because they tend to be pretty large, but Winlink has a built-in basic image editor where you can crop and resize the images to fit whatever you need to do. And that's a lot of fun to play with as well. Just keep in mind, don't send those via HF because you're killing the gateways.
All right, thank you. And the last one that I have in my list right now is the, possibly this question is going to pop up a lot as we go along. Which is better, a radio sound card or an external sound card?
It depends. The simple answer is it depends. If you have an ICOM rig, a 7300 or an IC71 or a 9700, by all means, you don't need an external sound card. If you absolutely must have Vara FM wide, then yes, get one of the DRA boards. But for anything else, Vara FM narrow, packet, WSJT, FT8, FT4, anything of those, use the internal sound card. I have a 7100. I love the built-in sound card. It's super. It works really well. It becomes more difficult when you have an FT991A. It's a great sound card, but whoever designed the FT991A was thinking about HF digital, and there's no voice on HF digital, so switching between voice and digital becomes actually quite difficult. Can you do it? Absolutely. If you only use it on digital, yeah, fine. But you know, if you do what we do a lot, switching and doing the tactical and the digital all on the same frequency, it becomes very tedious. So pretty much all the people in our group, we've got 8 of them with FT991As, they all went to signal links. So that's all I can tell you. But they all went to signal links because they find it a lot easier to just plug and play.
That's good information. Thank you. Yes. Okay, that's all I've got. Back to Dan.
All right.
Well, I can get myself unmuted here. Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. Sound like Lee came in for questions. Is there anything else that before we start to wrap this up that we need to discuss? Hearing nothing. This has been going on for quite a while, but it's been very informative. Okay, Jeff got your hand up. Go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. I have the older signal links. Do I need to buy the newer ones to get a better chance of using Vara?
No. The short answer is no. I wouldn't. Quite frankly, if you want to have Vara FM wide, then get yourself an RA board. But understand that you are losing N-beams right now, and you can make it work on HF, but you have to add COM0COM and CAT 7200, so it's a lot of extra trouble. If you're happy with the signal link the way it works right now, I wouldn't change anything because Vara FM narrow is 50 kilobytes per minute. And I challenge you to come up with a use case where we need to send more than 50 kilobytes per minute.
Well, the other question was the license allows a higher speed. If you don't buy the license, what is your speed? You didn't say anything about what the lower speed is.
Oh, it's about twice as fast as packet on the lower if you don't have a license.
Okay.
If you do have a license, then it's 10 times as fast on that, 10 times faster than packet on Vara FM narrow, and about 20 times faster on Vara FM wide.
Okay, great. Thanks, Oliver. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Again, I would always say start with what you have. If you want to upgrade later, you can always do that. All right.
This has been a great session. Very good. I recommend that when we get done here, get the video out, that maybe you share this with obviously with your Aries folks and DLCs and anybody you can, because there's lots of information here I think is of great value to a lot of people. Is there anything else? Oops, got a hand up. Clem, go ahead.
Okay, just a comment here. Thanks to Oliver and Joe Speroni, H08, the section manager for Pacific Section Hawaii. 2 years ago, we started Winlink, and we didn't have the infrastructure that we have today. We were using basically Telnet. And now, in the past year, 6 months, we have a lot of Vara FM gateways. We have 2 on the Windward side where I live. We have 5 in downtown Honolulu, 1 in Ewa, 1 in Wahiawa. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on Oahu alone. And when we had those gateways installed, that's when we had growth in Vara FM and the growth of Winlink. Especially Vara FM is what we're encouraging. And we're using the DRA 30 cards, and we're encouraging people to get the license so they can go wideband versus narrow. And it has been very, very fast for us so that we can pass messages quickly. Yes, I agree, but testing messages on HF is slower. But with Vara FM is the way to go. It's so much faster than Vara HF. And several of us do have Vara HF. Several others have Pactor capability as well. I do have Vara FM packet and Vara HF, but I use Vara FM a lot, and I try to reach the other tri-mode gateways on the neighbor islands using HF. So we've been very successful. We had an activation here recently for Hurricane Douglas, and we use Vara FM from our shelters. Yes, we had challenges, but we were able to pass the message forward one way or another to the Red Cross headquarters. So with that, thank you, Oliver, for your presentation. I'll learn a little bit more. I want to do Vara peer-to-peer, Vara FM peer-to-peer in our exercise here to get our people better prepared in case the gateways go down. Thank you very much. Look forward to next week's presentation.
And thank you so much, Clem, and our friends in Hawaii, because they've done a phenomenal job developing and really being part of that conversation, and really jumped in head first and done an amazing job getting everybody, bringing the community together and giving them that opportunity to go digital. And, you know, my hat's off to them, as it is to our friends in Washington, San Diego, who've been really leading the effort in many, many ways. So it's a community.
Can you briefly talk about the development of Vara and how we can support that?
Learn how to use it, and then when some things could be improved, bring out suggestions. That's the best way to do this, because that's what we've been doing. That's what Hawaii's been doing. That's what Washington with Scott and S7C have been doing. Our friend Martin, HB9 AUR, actually was one of the driving forces in making Vara HF as robust as it is. So use the groups, the Google groups, productively. Ask for things that can be delivered, and understand that Jose has other priorities sometimes, so it may not happen right away, and we're all volunteers doing this. But that if you have a good idea, if you say, listen, this is a way that it can be improved, that I think it can be improved, speak up. I think that's the best thing you can do.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't see more hands up. I asked Lee one more time. Is there anything in the chat area?
No, just more about supporting Vara and making sure that it's relatively inexpensive compared to Pactor modems.
Pactor modem is Pactor 4 is now what, $1,700 in the cheap version, and $55 for Vara I think is affordable. Plus, you know, if you buy a Signalink, $120. If you get an RA board, another $80. So.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great session. I appreciate everybody. We will have more on Vara coming up. Oscar's working on some stuff for us, and we'll be hearing from him, and we'll see what's coming down the line for us. With that, and unless somebody else has got something in the last moment, I'm going to pull the plug here.
73s, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, 73.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and
Oliver,
go forth and have fun.
Oliver, an excellent presentation.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you all.
We'll talk to you all soon, all right? Be safe, be well.